because there's going to be a moment in time where your child isn't with you. You want them to have opportunities to learn how to navigate emotions when you're not there. If they are dependent on you consistently managing their emotions, then that is going to continue to perpetuate in their adult relationships, and they're going to seek somebody else to be the one to manage their emotions. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa, and today we're going to talk about codependency and parenting. Again, this question is pulled from the Codependency Alchemy broadcast on Instagram. It's a broadcast channel where I share all the updates on podcast episodes that are being released, newsletters, and sometimes my thoughts, my musings, my feelings, my thoughts, my invitations to you guys. And this last month, I shared a question box where I let the people in the broadcast submit some of their questions that they wanted to be answered on the podcast and in the newsletter. And this one came through around codependency in parenting. And I love this one because anything that has to do with parenting and children is just something near and dear to my heart. It's what actually got me started on becoming a codependency coach, because I used to be a Montessori teacher. I have my master's in early childhood education with a concentration in Montessori studies, and had spent close to 10 years working with children and families and how we can nurture the authentic expression of children. There was a lot of work that I needed to do on myself when I began working with children, because children will usually trigger and activate the most soft, wounded parts of us, and it was through my work with children, through my work of nurturing their authenticity and their sovereignty, that I began to heal that inner child within myself. It was certainly not easy, but such a gift to be able to have the children mirror back to me the parts of me that really, really needed to be met and seen. So yeah, before I was a codependency coach, I was a parenting coach. I was supporting parents in learning how to interact with their child in a way that honors autonomy, in a way that supports the development of the child's will and willpower. And it was probably one of the most amazing things that I've done. And I learned through that work just how important it is to support adults who are still struggling to meet their inner child. And yeah, that's the real short version of how I got into this. But I personally reached out to the woman who submitted this topic to see if there was something specific that she was going through in her parenting journey, because it is so much easier to just hear what's going on in your parenting world and you're being a mama, and let's break it down. And she had a couple really good examples that I think everyone can relate to in some form or another. Now, I do want to preface that I also wasn't just a teacher. I was a nanny for a long time. So I helped support raise a lot of babies in their homes. So when this mom shared this first piece around feeding, I was like, oh, Mama, I am with you. I know how much of a struggle it can be when a child fixates on like their favorite food and doesn't want anything else. And this can be a challenging thing to navigate, because I think every child is unique. I think every situation is unique. But I am going to share a couple of perspectives and thoughts that come to mind for me in this mom's share. So she was sharing struggling with, gentle, respectful parenting, and her concern on if this is being too permissive in this specific situation. So it sounds like her child is being given a meal and her child only wants to eat yogurt. It's the only thing that they will eat. Everything else gets kind of thrown off the tray. And after the eating time is over, the child will then go to the fridge to get more of the yogurt. Like, so relatable. I have totally been there. So there's a couple things that come to mind for me with this. If the child is going to the fridge and getting more of the yogurts, then I would somehow avoid that as a possibility. This is very common when it comes to working with children, is we just want them to stop doing something that they're doing rather than thinking about how we as the adults are responsible for the environment in which the children are moving through. So if the environment isn't conducive to the behavior that you are desiring, then it is our responsibility to change the environment. So if the child is continuously eating the yogurts out of the fridge, then the yogurts need to go somewhere that the child is unable to access them. Or maybe there aren't yogurts at all during this period of time where you are trying to support them in having a more well-balanced or well-rounded diet. Now, this mom shared that it's the only thing her child is really eating, and that when they don't get it, there's these big feelings, there's crying, there's screaming. And so when this happens, this is where intimacy is really, really created. The boundary is placed because there isn't yogurt available. And so that then gets met with resistance, rightfully so. And so what I do whenever I set a loving boundary with a child is I really meet them in their experience. I don't make them wrong for their experience. I validate it and I hold space for them while they're in it. Why this is related to codependency is because a lot of times when mothers hear their child screaming or crying or in extreme discomfort, they want to fix it or they want to change it. So that's why we go and get the yogurts, because we want to make it stop. That's why we go and do whatever it is that they want to do, because we just want it to end. It is really just showing our own discomfort in somebody else's discomfort, specifically our child, which makes sense because they're of us, right? So there's just this immense tie to them, but we really want to make sure that we aren't fostering a sense of enmeshment, but rather fostering and cultivating a sense of autonomy and sovereignty. So how we do that, instead of going in and fixing it and giving them what they want, we sit with them and say, you really want that yogurt. You really want it. You're crying. I see you. I see your tears. You have big feelings about this. It's okay to have big feelings about the yogurt. And then I just wouldn't say very much after that. Just validate, because for some children, too much talking can be overstimulating. And so you just sit with them and allow them to process their big feelings. A lot of times when children have constantly been given something over and over and over again, they have learned not to manipulate you, because that is just such a that's a myth that is really a disservice to parents, because then parents think their children are these manipulative little creatures that are controlling them. No, your child is just learning behavior, period. They don't have that part of their brain, especially if they're under the age of 6. They don't have that part of their brain that says that manipulative piece. They might learn, if I scream and cry, I get yogurt, but they don't learn that that is a way to control you. They're just like, oh, this equals that. There isn't that control piece or that power over piece that they are consciously aware of at all. They're just learning behavior. So it will, in the beginning, if you're starting to place boundaries on things for them, they're going to have big feelings about it. They're going to scream, they're going to cry, they're going to tantrum. Your role as the adult and as the parent in that situation is to make sure that they are safe by allowing them to tantrum or have their big feelings in a safe space, and making sure that you are also regulated. Like, it's going to be a period of time where you're going to need to really tend to yourself and know that this is going to be hard. Like, prepare yourself for the struggle, and just remind yourself, whenever I was doing this with a child who didn't have very many boundaries, you have to remember it's uncomfortable for them to have that much power. It's really, really uncomfortable for them to be the one that's in control. It actually heightens their sense of anxiety, because they don't have someone telling them that they've got them. Like, they control the environment. Think about how that must feel for a 4-year-old, for a 3-year-old, for a 2-year-old, to be the controllers of the environment. And that's why a lot of times children who don't have strong boundaries with their parents end up being the ones that have these really big, challenging behaviors, because they're just trying to find, where is the boundary? How far do I push this? And it's, again, not from a manipulative place or not from a malintentive place, but like they're just trying to see, like, where does this end? You have to remember, like, they're learning how to be in the world. And us as the adults or as the parents want to make sure that we have this structure around them, so they're like, oh, I can bump into this wall, mom's got me, or oh, I can bump into this. They might not like bumping into the wall, right? But it's going to help them feel safer in the experience and in their environment, because they know that they're being held and supported by the adult. So the other thing that could be a potential way to navigate the yogurt fiasco is just letting them without trying to force anything else. There are food coaches out there that would know how to navigate this better than me, so I'm not going to try to pretend like I am, the expert in this field by any means, but there are some people who I followed in the past that are like, you just continue to give the child what they want. Eventually, like, it'll, like, they'll release it. Like, the fact that we're putting so much pressure on them is almost the reason why it's such a big deal. Like, if you stop making it a big deal, then like they'll stop making it a big deal. So maybe you get to decide what feels right for your family. To me, I would just go into, like, what is it that I want my child to have? If I want them to have a well-rounded meal, then I need to eliminate the things that are keeping it from being well-rounded. And the mom expressed concern of, like, what do I just let my child starve? And that's what you communicate with them as well, with the child. You just tell them, this is what we have to eat today, and it'll be here for you to eat whenever you're hungry. So if they refuse to eat it, it's always available to them, right? Just keeping it on a plate, putting it up. And every time they say, I'm hungry, you can say, beautiful, here's your food. Here's the food for today. And they get the choice, right? So you're letting them know that they have autonomy, in the sense that, like, they get to eat this food whenever they want, but that they don't get to choose the food all of the time, especially when you're trying to, again, create that well-balanced, meal for your child. And then something I would do, if you do have a strong-willed child and they refuse to eat that food, I would let them, this is actually what I would do more than what I just said. I would let them help you choose the food. So I used to do this with children who I used to nanny. I would tell them they get a fruit, they get a veggie, they get a protein, and they get a grain. And I would give them an option between two of each thing. Do you want an apple or a banana today? And then they would choose an apple or a banana. Do you want broccoli or carrots today? And they would choose between broccoli or carrots. And then I would say, do you want crackers or oatmeal? And they would choose between crackers or oatmeal. You see what I mean? So they're getting to practice autonomy and choice. And when they are choosing their food, they're more apt to eat it. You can do this with super young children. I used to do this with a toddler that didn't even talk. I would just put two in front of her and I'd say, which one do you want today? And whichever one she touched, I would say, oh, you want blueberries. And then I would put a few blueberries on her plate and I put them away. And then I would do it with the veggies, and then I would do it with the grain and the protein, etc. This, I think, is so special. I love this. Forget what I said before. Like, do that one. And if they just say no, then you get to say, you can choose, or I will choose for you. So saying you can choose or I can choose for you is also giving them autonomy. You're letting them know that they do have the opportunity to make their own choice. However, if they are unwilling to do that, then the choice that they're making is for you to make that choice. So that's what I would suggest when it comes to literally anything. Food, yes, but like even things around the house, like, hey, we're going to clean up. Do you want to clean up the Legos or the books? Right? So it's like, either way we're cleaning up, but you get to decide what it is that you're cleaning up. I want to do the books. Okay, I'll do the Legos, right? Like, this is so empowering for everyone, and it helps things get done and get done a lot quicker than before. Oh, there was something else that came through that I was going to speak to, but yeah, so I think overall, to answer that piece, it's, Can you remove the obstacle in the environment by removing the yogurt from the environment for a period of time, and knowing that that week or those couple weeks it's going to be just a little bit harder while they're navigating their feelings around it. So just knowing like, okay, this is hard, but it has an ending. I always tell parents tantrums have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They will always end. Sometimes the child needs to go through the tantrum to really process the emotions that they're feeling, but it will help them. It will help ease them over time, especially if you're the person who is holding the safe space. So for example, I actually have a couple friends whose children I got to watch, and they're very young, 6, 7 months old. And that first week, what was happening was tears, like the whole time, just tears the whole time they were here. And I just sat with them and I had my hand gently on their bellies and just said, I see you, I see you. Or I was holding them occasionally. I see you, I hear you. My name's Alyssa. I'm gonna, be watching you sometimes, and I love you and you're safe. But I just let them cry. Like it is dysregulating sometimes, but over time you realize that their crying isn't always about you. I mean, obviously you have to make sure that their needs are met, like they're changed, they're fed, they're not super tired. But if all of those basic needs are met, then you're just showing them that you're a safe person for them to be with. And so a week of crying, the following week, like now they're just happy. They're happy to be with me. They're smiling, they're giggling, they're talking, right? Like they had to move through their discomfort of being away from their parents for the first time for a short period of time. And I showed them that they could trust me and that I wasn't going anywhere, that I loved them even when they were crying, that I was safe for them even when they were sad, even when they did have these big feelings. So that's the gift that we get to give our children, the toddlers, or even when your child is older. Validate their experience. I see you, you're crying. Try not to tell them what they feel, right? Like I try not to tell them you feel sad or you feel angry, or sometimes I do, but I try more so just to say what I'm seeing. I see you and I see you're crying. I see you and you're kicking your legs. I see you and you're reaching for me. Maybe you want me to hold you. I'm going to pick you up now. And then I pick them up, you know? So yeah, just communicating more than you think. Communicate more than you think, and trying to stay as objective as possible around what you're seeing. Now, the next example that she had gave me was when she is touched out. She stays at home with the children. She's a full-time mom, and sometimes she needs to go to the gym, or sometimes she just needs to go to her own room and have some time to decompress. And when codependency shows up in our parenting, we can feel a lot of guilt over that, especially if we go to another room in the house and our child is still crying. And if they know how to talk, they're crying for mom. That makes it even harder. And then we just go in to save right away. But what this mom is experiencing is the negative impact that codependency has on our relationships with our children, because what ends up happening is, yeah, she's touched out, she's overwhelmed, she feels exhausted, because what she's getting is the negative impacts of codependency and parenting, because she's feeling resentful, overwhelmed, and touched out. And a lot of moms, I think, experience this because they are the ones that are responsible for the soothing, rather than letting the other parent, perhaps, and I know if it's a single parent, it's different, but letting the other parent learn their own language with the child, right? Dad is going to have a different way of relating to the child, and the child's going to have a different way of relating to the dad, and that's theirs to figure out. When we constantly go in and intercept our child feeling upset every single time, we are actually taking away the opportunity for the other parent and child to figure out their own way. It's taking away their own autonomy with each other. It's taking away their resilience. You're basically saying, like, I don't trust that you can do this, rather than doing the work that actually needs to be done in those moments, which is what is coming up for me, guilt. Then I need to sit with the guilt that I'm feeling. Because when we don't take space that we need and deserve, we end up showing up to our relationship with our partner or to the relationship with our children in a state of dysregulation. And when we're dysregulated or resentful or angry or frustrated or touched out, that affects how we show up in that relationship, right? Think about someone who you have a resentful relationship towards. Do you show up open-hearted? Do you show up patient? Do you show up happy? Do you show up in joy? Do you show up in presence? Probably not. I'm just going to name it. Like, likely you aren't showing up from that place. That's why space is important. That's why taking time for yourself is important. The mother wound says that I have to do and be everything for everyone in the name of taking care of myself. And how we heal the mother wound is by saying, I trust that the love and attention and presence that I give to my child when I'm with them will hold them through the moments when I'm not with them. Because there's going to be a moment in time where your child isn't with you. You want them to have opportunities to learn how to navigate emotions when you're not there. If they are dependent on you consistently managing their emotions, then that is going to continue to perpetuate in their adult relationships, and they're going to seek somebody else to be the one to manage their emotions. So if the pattern is, when you leave, they cry and they cry for mama, then you get to tell them before you leave, this is where I'm going. This is how long I'll be gone for. I love you. And when I get back, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you a kiss. Like, you're going to give them all the information that they need. And then they get to navigate that with their other parent or with whoever they're with. And then when you come back, you get to tell them, see, I left and I came back. And when I came back, I gave you a kiss and like all of the things. So you're letting them know that, like, yes, I leave, but I also come back, right? And that's how we build secure attachment with our children. That's also how we build secure attachment with ourselves if we want to go into inner child stuff. But it's being consistent in that way and knowing that the times that our children needs us the most are caretaking times. It's when they're eating. It's when we're, doing hygiene, like changing diapers or bath time, and then nap times, sleeping times. Those are the times where we really want to bring ultimate presence to our relationship with our child. In the times in between, those caretaking times, we want them to explore. We want them to have time on their own. We want them to learn how to learn the world around them. We want them to learn the world around them. They don't need us there at all times. If they want us sometimes, that's fine. But if they're dependent on you being there with them every single moment, then think about how that is setting them up for failure or success in the future. Like, for example, I think about how I was as a child, and like, I did not want to leave my mom. I could not handle my emotions. I was so anxious and I was so overwhelmed. I made her ride the bus with me. And this goes into my adulthood. College, I was calling her on my lunch breaks in college for her to pick where I was going to eat because I didn't want to make the wrong choice. And I didn't trust my decisions. Like, it totally affected my entire life into my adulthood. And it was like, I finally had to realize, like, this is not healthy. This is not healthy. But it was filling my mom's need to be needed. And that's oftentimes like the people pleaser in us, like, just wants to give our child what they want and wants them to need us at all times. It makes us feel good because it tends to our deep-rooted fear of abandonment, right? If I am needed by this person at all times, then they won't leave me, right? We have to tend to that so that we are not continuously cultivating a dysfunctional relationship with our children, because that dysfunctional relationship with our child will then translate to how they relate to others in relationships as adults. So is it going to be hard for your partner and your child as they navigate doing things on their own while you're gone? Yes, it probably will be challenging. It'll be challenging for them just like it was challenging for you when you were learning the language of your child as well. But we're taking away that opportunity from our partners or from the other caretakers that our children are with by going in and inserting ourselves. That's why when I was a teacher, the parents drop the child off at the door for a reason, because it is my responsibility to create a safe relationship with a child while they're in my environment. And so, even though parents wanted to come in, they're like, oh, my child's crying, like maybe I'll just sit with them and I'll read with them for a minute. It's like, I love that that is how you guys connect. And thank you for sharing that with me. I will try the reading as well. And we're going to figure out our own way of relating while we're in this environment, right? So that the child can learn to feel safe in different relationships with other people as well. So in your home, this is your partner. If it is too hard for you to stay in your own room because your child is crying the whole time, then remove yourself from the house. Sometimes that's what's needed. Go for a walk, go to a workout. It will be challenging for them in the beginning. They will learn their way. And in that time apart, when all of the fears and all of the guilt and all of the shame that are coming up to the surface, that is your invitation to meet that part of you that feels the guilt, to meet the part of you that feels the shame, and tend to it, because you don't want to continue to keep moving from that wounded place and strengthening those dynamics that are from a wounded place. You want to begin to tend to them so that you can move and relate in a different way that is more sovereign, more authentic, more autonomous, right? It reminds me of this Kahlil Gibran poem where they talk about children. It's like my favorite poem, and I always give it to new moms. Man, I wish I had it. I don't have it with me, but I'll maybe find it and link it in the show notes. It's really beautiful. It talks about how children are not of us. They may come through us, yes, but they are their own self. And over generations, we've enmeshed and enmeshed and enmeshed in our relationships with our children, trying to fill this void within us, when really we have to remember that they're their own soul, they're their own self. And we want to, instead of being the one to, I don't know, be all the things for them, we want them to learn how to be all the things for themselves, if that makes sense. We want to cultivate an environment in which they learn how to grow in their confidence and their abilities and their strengths. And we want them to learn emotional intelligence through feeling emotions, right? All we're teaching a child who is upset and crying because they're not getting yogurt is that you crying over yogurt makes me uncomfortable. Your emotions make me uncomfortable. And so I'm going to soothe it with this yogurt because I know it'll make you stop crying. It's saying that like your emotions are too much, your feelings are too much. And so I just want it to stop. Like that's the underlying thing that we're communicating, instead of saying, I see you and your emotions. It is okay for you to feel your emotions. It's safe for you to feel your emotions. And I will sit here and be with you while you're in it. It's a much different thing that we're subtly communicating through our actions. So that's what I have for you guys today. And I hope it was supportive and helpful. I definitely would love to do more episodes that are specific towards parenting. If you have a topic or a situation that you're wanting me to record an episode on, or maybe do a newsletter on, make sure you join the Codependency Alchemy broadcast on Instagram. It's basically just a big chat. It's a broadcast channel, meaning you'll get messages from me, it'll get sent to your DMs. And yeah, it's just a way that we can all connect in another way. Some really quick announcements. In the next couple weeks, the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind will be launching. The Mastermind is an intimate group of 6 women who come together for 6 months. We have a private group chat. We meet 3 times a month, and it is some of the most beautiful work that I think gets to be done. We take these topics that we're sharing here, of course, on the podcast, but we're going way deep with it, and you basically get me in your pocket at all times for 6 months, and that is just invaluable. Like, I think that's when the most work is done, is in those moments where you're activated, or in those moments when you're triggered and you're like, this is what I'm moving through, this is what I'm going through, and I will sit there and give you reflections and support you in navigating them by anchoring into some of the tools that I'll teach you in the mastermind as well. There's just nothing like coming together with a group of women and being seen and seeing others in their experience, because it cultivates so much grace and compassion and helps us feel not so alone in our experiences. And yeah, it's just amazing. There's 6 spots. There is already a wait list because there are such limited spots. So if you're looking for that kind of support, then definitely send me a DM on Instagram so I can add you to that wait list. And yeah, doors will open in the beginning of April, and we will start the mastermind in May. If you found this episode supportive or helpful, please share it with somebody else who you think would benefit from this conversation. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you haven't already left a review or a rating on the podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it is super, super helpful. I'm so grateful for all of you who have already done that. It really helps get this podcast out to people who don't follow me on social media. So thank you for your support in that. That's all I have for you today. I will see you guys next week.